Welcome back to Cut and Splice. This is Jason,
And Matt,
And this is Gil.
and this evening we are going to be talking about the movie Licorice Pizza. It's the Paul Thomas Anderson film. We're mostly talking about this because while we were discussing one of our other movies, this popped up, and I think if I remember correctly, I think you guys all kind of said something very briefly about, oh yeah, that was so good and something like that, and I was like, oh, I think I might be the only one that didn't really like that movie that much. And then we were like, okay, well, we better talk about it because we seem to have better discussions when there's at least some sort of disagreement to discuss. Have we done a PTA film yet?
No, that's a good point. It is our first one, which whenever we have like big directors that we kind of start with like an odd one, like we did AI for Spielberg.
That is an odd one for him for sure.
It's almost as if we're saving the biggies for like
yeah,
later down the road.
We had quite a gap between Tenet and Inception.
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, no, but I think the reason why I think this is useful in some ways, say compared to do like There Will Be Blood or something, is because like you said, for what differences, and it still gives us an opportunity to talk about the rest of his movies briefly and rank them. um but yeah, it's also whenever a master director does a movie that's a bit weird, a bit of a departure in some ways, it's just worthwhile, yeah, discussion, to see where it falls for everybody.
Yeah. I think it's um, safe to say that you and Matt both think more highly of Paul Thomas Anderson than I do. But despite all the um, critical things I'm going to say about his movie, I did want to make it very clear that I do think he's a pretty fine director, and several of his movies I have really loved. I do think that maybe just because he's held so high by so many people, maybe on some level I kind of probably see him as slightly overrated. But I mean, that's only in like the most basic sort of way. I mean, I think he's very good, and I love several of his movies, and I've seen most of them. And so yeah, just wanted to kind of like throw that out there. And on top of all that, I don't um I don't like hate this movie. Uh, I don't hate Licorice Pizza. I just I don't think that it was nearly as good as most of the people I've spoken to seem to think that it was.
Yeah, I guess we can get right to it. I mean, it's what is your ranking, because that could be a jumping off point.
You know what? And I just before we did this, I actually took them a moment to write down the movies that I've seen of his, and I did not think about what sort of number I would give it.
mhm,
I should have done that. But out of Paul Thomas Anderson's films, I think, and we've discussed this before. Some of this will probably be stuff we've retread on, even just in the podcast as well. But I think I like Punch Drunk Love and Boogie Nights about the same. I just think they're very different movies. I think you were the first person I think that I ever heard say that Punch Drunk Love was basically a perfect film, even though it's a small film and slightly less ambitious than some of other movies, but still within its scope, I think it is perfect. And Boogie Nights is just fantastic. I love that movie. But after that, I'd say there's a pretty big gap, and then there'd be like There Will Be Blood, and then below that, Licorice Pizza, and then The Master and Magnolia, kind of like around the same area, and then Inherent Vice, definitely lower than that. And I've never seen Phantom Thread, so sadly, I do need to see that one.
Yeah. What about you, Matt?
oh, that's well. The only thing that isn't difficult about this is that There Will Be Blood is his magnum opus at this point. I mean, that's just like uh, that was like our generation Citizen Kane, as far as I'm concerned. That movie just knocked my fucking socks off. You know, the funny thing is, I like Magnolia a lot more than most people, and
Definitely
I'm
more than me, probably.
yeah,
That says a
and
lot because Magnolia is one of his most popular movies.
so I'm probably going to slide that into number 2. Phantom Thread is going to be number 3. Boogie Nights is number 4, and that might have actually gotten a little bit of a bump for me because I just saw Babylon, and it's just like I actually like Babylon a lot more than just about everybody apparently. And I mean,
I'm still excited to see it.
Yeah, the comparisons between Boogie Nights and Babylon are hard to miss. Actually, yes, geez, the Master. How
Yeah.
I don't know how I got this far down the line without bringing up the Master or Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah, no, Punch Drunk Love is a bigger one, but I know it's not a movie that everybody puts
Yeah,
high on their lists. So.
it's funny how Hard Eight is probably gonna drop off the radar.
Oh, sorry,
But
I also didn't see that one.
but I mean, it was his first movie, and I mean, I really don't even feel equipped to rank it right now out of the movies that has made sense. But I mean, everything from Boogie Nights to Licorice Pizza, as far as I'm concerned, are probably 7.5 stars or above, except for Inherent Vice. That was a movie that really just didn't sit well with me. But I don't know. I'll leave it at that. But I guess Licorice Pizza falls somewhere on like what, number 5 or something.
Did you mention you mentioned Phantom Thread at 3, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, Punch Drunk Love is my favorite movie of his, but There Will Be Blood is his most important movie in a way. Like it is his best movie, but for me personally, Punch Drunk Love is a perfect movie. I gave it a 10. And the movies that I've ranked 9 are, and this is probably in this order, is There Will Be Blood, Phantom Thread would be 3rd. I'm on the fence between Licorice Pizza and The Master. I think they're actually similar in some ways, that they are kind of weird, and they're like, in some ways they're departures from what he usually does, but not really. Yeah, like The Master was actually a made sense, the continuation from There Will Be Blood, and then Licorice Pizza is some sort of continuation from what he tried to do and didn't succeed in Inherent Vice, but succeeded here. That's what I felt, at least. Succeeding on the humor, like making it more humorous, but still have heart and be profound in some sense, like most of his movies. And right below that, I would say Boogie Nights and Magnolia. I'm not forgetting anything there, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, and then Hard Eight would be above Inherent Vice, just because if I rewatch both those movies, maybe I'll like Inherent Vice better, and I'll think it's a better movie. But it's just, and I should rewatch it because I've heard from some people, they said they've rewatched it and it's much better once you kind of get what he's going for there. But to me, it was just like a wannabe Coen Brothers movie. Basically, that didn't really work, and that's not something I expected from Paul Thomas Anderson. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's trying to be something else, and I just didn't get it. And yeah, but with Licorice Pizza, he really he got it. Like if he had the same tone and spirit that he had in Licorice Pizza and Inherent Vice, it would be twice the movie it was. So yeah, so I guess ultimately, like Hard Eight would be like right above it slightly, just like tied with Inherent Vice.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much my overall reaction to Licorice Pizza. Is when I watched it, and I guess you can tell me, Jason, and it'll be interesting to see where Matt falls. But it's kind of an uncomfortable movie, like in so many ways. But then you realize as you keep watching it that it's just supposed to be. It's just really exploring this time and place in this very raw way, and it's almost toying with you. It's almost like playing a game, and so the first few instances where things bother you, you think, oh, that's like a bad note, like he's missing a note. But then as it keeps going and there's more and more of these moments, you realize that there's some sort of consistency to it. There's an idea here, and by the end of it, you just completely are taken by it. At least me. I mean, I can totally understand that it's not as much of a slam dunk for some people as it might be for others.
I just think it was a miss.
Yeah. So I mean, from what in what sense? What were the particulars? I guess. I mean, without getting into, I guess we can get spoilers later on. But as far as like, was the tone, the humor didn't hit you, or performances?
I don't know how I can talk about it without going into spoilers. I have like 6 major points I want to talk about.
Okay.
And I don't want to just like read out my notes to you. So I don't know, we could probably just like go one at a time and talk about them or something. But like, I had like 6 very important points that I want to talk about, and they're all pretty much stuff that involve going into the movie.
Yeah, which is totally fine. I mean, Matt, where did it fall for you as far as like your reaction to it? I'm just curious as far as recommending it.
I highly recommend. Probably a high. Okay, one of his movies is Hard Eight. I'll just say a high 8 out of 10. I think it's. I think that you kind of touched on something where like it is supposed to be uncomfortable, and as Jason has said before, I'm a bit of a cinematic masochist, so that falls precisely into my purview, uh, into my taste, and yeah, I think it's a masterfully made film. It's driven very well by 2 relatively unknown actors. I mean, obviously, one, the son of the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman, uh, with who held up very well, around movie stars that have been around forever. Uh, it's I think he was. Uh, I mean, again, this isn't There Will Be Blood. This isn't Magnolia. This isn't uh, Punch Drunk Love. But I mean, this is Paul Thomas Anderson making a very good Paul Thomas Anderson movie. So yeah, that's where I
Yeah,
stand.
and I think there is some similarities to Punch Drunk Love in the sense
Yeah.
that it's a love story, um, and it's in the valley, but
Yeah.
but there's something about Punch Drunk Love, even though it had some very realistic scenes within it and portrayals, it was a very magical movie.
Hmm.
And this was magical tone wise, um, but it was very, very realistic. Like the intent was here to make this so raw, almost like the raunchy comedies of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Like in that sense, where like people didn't have makeup on. Everything was super raw. Like it just really felt like he just plucked you and put you in that time and place. And it almost feels intentional that he went with two non-professional actors as the leads, because they allow for that rawness to exist, and then he puts a lot of prose around them, which gives you meat, like scenes with some meat in them. But the rawness of the two main characters, all that is very, very intentional, and the way it's shot is very raw, very texture-like, grainy, like film.
Yeah.
Shot on film. It is a film, not a movie.
Yes.
But yeah, like all those things were very intentional. And the more you start stacking all these various things that he's doing, and we'll get to the rest of what the problems that Jason has, it just feels like it was he was just firing on all cylinders. Even though it looks like a mishmash of, it really looks like he was just kind of almost riffing in a way. But it's almost like jazz riffing, but with a mastered jazz player. Like he just can't hit a wrong note. That's to me again, and we'll get into that. So, but that's like the way I feel. But I wonder what that is. So it'll be interesting to get into it in the second half, and of course to see if Matt agrees on those specific points. But yeah, I guess it's 2 recommends from us and Jason on the fence as far as recommend.
Yeah, I know jack shit about music, so I don't know if I'll even be able to agree with your terminology. But
no, I don't listen to
anyway.
jazz either. But what I mean is, like, the jazz musicians, because they improvise, and this really feels like a master filmmaker just going out there and just making it as he goes. Now it almost feels that way, but it's not. You know that a lot of it was he was really like calculated, but it's such a raw movie, and it works so well for what it's supposed to be. And and it could have easily been another Inherent Vice. Easily. Like I was concerned. I was really concerned. Like when I started seeing the humor, I was like, is this gonna not gonna work? But it totally, I don't know. It just captured me midway through the movie and on, basically. Like I totally got it.
I don't think it worked.
Okay. Jason, go for it.
Yeah. So spoilers. The 6
are you going to give a rating before the spoilers?
Did you give a rating?
I'd give it a 6.
Oh, 6. Okay, cool. Yeah. So now spoilers.
There's, like I said, there's 5 or 6 things I wanted to discuss, but like this movie, like first and foremost, the movie is like, it's episodic, and it's episodic in a like the worst way that a movie can be episodic. This movie's like filled with and then moments, and I've read some critics that said that the movie is made up of brilliant vignettes. These are not brilliant vignettes. These are like hack episodes. You could rearrange these episodes in just about any way you want, and it wouldn't matter. Like aside from when they have their first little meet in the first episode, the first little sequence, and then the ending, like you could pretty much mix up the middle in any way you want. And it's not going to make any difference. And I don't know. It's like PTA, he said that he was inspired by American Graffiti with this movie. Licorice Pizza is no American Graffiti. Like American Graffiti, like Richard Dreyfuss's character, Kurt, he's like convinced that he should stay in the town where he grew up. And then over the course of the movie, he encounters a bunch of characters. And it's kind of episodic in that sense, except it's different because there's other people doing different stuff too. But still, each time he meets somebody, it like illustrates for him that like, the negative aspects of life that he can look forward to by staying in town. And each of these characters come with their own little sequence, and it makes his little journey through one monumental night of his life. And that's great storytelling, because at the end it changes him. In Licorice Pizza, the episodes are not like strung together in that way at all. Like there's no clear pathway that leads Gary and Alana from one scene to the next. And then even when there's like a little bit of a hint at the end of one of them about where it's going next, you could put that same thing at the end of any of the other episodes. It wouldn't matter. There's like little to no like indication of how much time has passed between these episodes, and sometimes there's like little indication at all of what the characters are doing during that time between them. It's really episodic, and that's like one of the biggest problems with it.
Well, as far as the episodic part, for me personally, that's what makes the movie unique and more interesting than a movie like an American Graffiti. Because American Graffiti is a good movie. I didn't rank it, but
Much better movie.
I would probably give it like an 8 or a 9 as well. Like it's a very good movie. It's very solid, but it's of the time, and it kind of ticks all the boxes, like script wise. It's George Lucas was good at that early on.
In terms of storytelling, it is far better than this movie.
I disagree. I think this is a more unique movie. I mean, I think American Graffiti is solid for what it's supposed to be, but this is, it's like comparing 2001 to Star Wars. Like this is doing what 2001 was doing. It was doing everything episodic. Like again, Star Wars is more enjoyable, more entertaining than 2001: A Space Odyssey. But 2001 is changing the form, is doing something different, is episodic. It is going for something bigger, and I think that this movie is also going for something big, and it's going for something that's not on very much on the surface. It's just it's trying to catch a time and a place and an age, and it's doing it in a way that no other coming of age movie has done, which is what a good movie should do, is do something new. American Graffiti, I guess, was one of the original ones that, you know, kind of led to like Dazed and Confused and all those other ones that, you know, were like the coming of age. But I feel like this one, the fact that it's episodic, the fact that it's touching on several things with the culture at the time, and the egos and the rawness of the leads, those are things that I haven't seen captured in quite that way in a movie before. Which is why I give it props.
I would say if we're talking about capturing the time, I would say that American Graffiti, Dazed and Confused, Fast Times are all better at that than this one.
I mean, I like Dazed and Confused. I'm not crazy about Richmond High. Like, I think it's okay, but and American Graffiti is probably the most solid movie out of all those. But they're all just classic movies. They kind of, Dazed and Confused is a bit more, I feel like, episodic in some ways.
A little bit more, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but to me, American Graffiti or Dazed and Confused are not being done by a master filmmaker. Like what's going on here, filmmaking wise, is just such a joy. Such a joy.
I don't know what you found so joyful about it.
I don't know what to tell you. It's I mean the camera moves, the choreography of the movement, the use of the, you know, the running, the energy, the scene with the truck. Like there's a lot of
it was definitely a very tense scene, but it didn't do anything.
What do you mean?
Right, like, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
You know, like that's what kids do. They take unnecessary risk. They do stupid stuff. That's like the most raw sensation that you can have, is doing something really stupid and living to tell the tale. That's like, that was a brilliant scene.
And then it ends, and it resets to the next episode, and their relationship is right back to where it was before. It does nothing for the story. If they had ended the movie after that, it would have done something. But it didn't. It just moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, because life doesn't end if you survive the truck, you have to keep going.
It does in storytelling when you're telling a story.
But that's why I'm saying this is not a normal movie. It was trying to do something. No, it's better, because I don't want to see another American Graffiti just in the Valley in the 70s. I want to see a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and this is better. To me, this is better. Like, I would come back to this movie before I come back to American Graffiti, because there's more unique stuff in it.
the only reason I even brought up American Graffiti is because PTA said that it inspired him. And when I thought back to it, I was like, yeah, there's a lot of similarities. It too is kind of episodic. It too is a coming of age film, and it's better. But anyway, I don't want to harp
No,
too much on
and I'm
American
not
Graffiti.
gonna disagree
Yeah.
with you because I said it's a good movie, and two people can disagree on like which one is better. It's not like you're comparing this with, you know, like a really bad like coming of age movie.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, moving on. My second big problem is with the character of Gary. He doesn't learn or grow. From the very first shot of the movie, it sets up the will they, won't they scenario, which is great because, you know, it's a coming of age film. That's what you want for this kind of movie. It's fine. But then there are about 4 moments throughout these episodes, air quotes, that could have easily ended the movie. There's little to no reason why Alana grows, again, air quotes, enough to accept Gary at the end. But when she finally does, and they go back to the pinball arcade, he makes an idiotic juvenile announcement and that pisses her off, showing that he really hasn't grown or changed at all. I mean, and I've heard people argue that they loved that ending because it makes the story like cyclical rather than final. And I really hope that that's not actually what PTA was hoping for, because, or what he had in mind, because like, if it is, then what the hell is the point of the movie? Like, if it's cyclical, like the way that like Inside Llewyn Davis was, which was a genius ending to that movie, basically hammered home the point of the whole movie. You know, what does the end of this movie say? That Alana is fucked no matter what she does? Like, there's no hope for her, even if she picks Gary rather than all these other guys. Their relationship problems will be forever cyclical.
To some degree. I mean, for one thing, I think Gary is still a child. Like, he still has growing up to do.
Yeah, but but that's a terrible way to end a coming of age film, because we all know that at the end of, say, something like what's the one we talked about earlier? Edge of 17 and Ladybird. You know, we all know that those two girls have a lot of growing up still to do, but each of those movies end on moments that hammer home that they've grown up. This movie ends on the opposite.
Yes, again,
The
but
worst thing you want to do for a coming
point.
of age film.
But they're generic movies. This is not a generic movie. I'll let Matt go though. Okay.
Is it a coming of age film though?
I don't know.
It's
I
not
feel
exactly.
Like it is. It's been described that way by many people.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's not really a coming of age movie in the traditional sense. I agree. It's capturing a moment in time that just happens to be when he's like in his teens and she's in her 20s. But it's not necessarily in the classic sense a coming of age movie.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me throw a little bit more onto the fire then. Okay. In this movie, if you're looking at it from Alana's point of view, right? You got a lot of great characters, side characters. I mean, Bradley Cooper, Tom Waits' character, Sean Penn, the politician, I can't remember the actor's name, the
Benny
assistant
Safdie.
to the politician who like kind of got her the job in the first place. And even to a lesser extent, the gay boyfriend that she like has to get to know that over that one night real quickly.
Matthew.
At the end. Thank you. Yes. Every adult, like, and again, air quotes is a very appropriate thing for that, in Alana's life, they're all like mean, spiteful. Maybe they're using her. They're terribly depressed. They're rude, inappropriate. Many of them are pretty immature themselves. Gary is the only source of comfort and familiarity she gets throughout the whole movie. And it's like the whole movie is telling Alana that the so-called men in her life are all children anyway. So you might as well fuck the 15-year-old that's in love with you, which is weird, but something I could at least understand, you know, if it had a happy ending, which it doesn't. At least not if we're to believe that the final scene is meant to be like their relationship struggles are ever cyclical. That's not a happy ending. So if that's what they were going for, then that's pretty fucked up.
Are relationships ever cyclical?
Yeah.
I mean, like, until somebody dies, is the relationship ever really cyclical, or do you just keep going through more struggles and then finding ways through them together.
Are you asking cyclical or non-cyclical? Because it sounds like you're asking if they're ever not cyclical.
I'm saying that relationships are not cyclical.
Well, only so much as if you're being very specific about, or like technical about the word usage.
I am being very specific and
okay,
technical.
so then forget about the word cyclical if that frustrates you. Then repetitive and ongoing in what seems like a cyclical manner. Is that better?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I mean, it seems like long-term relationships are like that until somebody dies, or the relationship ends.
So then what do you feel that ending is trying to communicate?
That this is what relationships are. I mean, well, but I mean,
if
also,
that's what
like,
you're trying to communicate, there's about 30 ways you could have made a better movie to communicate.
Okay, okay, but I mean, yeah, I only got to put out one like independent clause there. There's a reason why the movie's called Licorice Pizza. I mean, like, these are things that don't fit together, right?
Well, it was going to be called Soggy Bottom.
or hot dog salad, or I don't know. It's just, but it's I mean, it's the most on the nose title that you can imagine that people will still like scratch their heads over for some reason. They're you're talking about two people who I mean, like, really, if they had sex, it would be statutory rape, and
it's actually one of the next points I was going to get to.
Right. So, like, there's already an immediate problem with a relationship, but it's like two positively charged ions, but they're trying to stick together despite everything that's going on. I think that's basically what the movie is about. Two positively charged ions trying to stick together.
I guess.
Yeah, no, to me, that's why the 2001 analogy is because obviously this is not 2001, but it really feels like, yeah, essentially that there is no lead characters in this movie. Like in like 2001, it's humanity is the protagonist. It's the show, like, I'm gonna put you in this time and place with these two characters, and I'm gonna make them as real as possible. They're gonna be non-actors, so that they won't have polished performances, but at least they won't be bad, but it's not gonna be anything that's like, they're gonna ham it up or something. They're just gonna be themselves, and I'm gonna transport you to feel what it is to be a kid in that time and place. And there's something very like, I don't know what's the word, like ethereal about it, or like it's almost like, if you want to talk about the whole idea of movies of being like a fly on the wall, this is it. Like, most movies don't feel that way because they're very formulaic. Like we said, like, American Graffiti and other ones, they try to veer off the generic path, but inevitably it's very tough to make a movie work episodically, in this raw way, and have no point really. There's no ending. It's not cyclical, but it's life. Life keeps going. It's just, this is life, but succeed, like, be entertaining while you're watching it, and be able to relate to it. And I think that's why I think what Matt's saying about particles, like, really feels like that. Like, it's sort of like in Punch Drunk Love. I think there was some of the magic transitions there were like, moving particles and stuff. I'm not sure, but what he did in Punch Drunk Love with the colors and everything, it's what he's doing here, just without those fancy fireworks. This is all just real, raw, you know, nothing too just very realistic, but at the same time, it's got this heightened tension to the scenes, to the energy, to make it, entertaining, of course, to some of the humor, and all that lifts it together. If you didn't have any of those things, this movie would be a drag. Like, it needed the humor, it needed the energy to sustain it. And by doing all that, all of a sudden you got this profound like meditation and what it is to be like a teenager and someone in your 20s, like in the valley in the 70s. Like, there's no movie like it. It's never been done, and I don't think never ever will be done again, because this guy is a genius. Like, he's the only one who could have made this movie. It's one of those movies. I don't know, I can't see anybody else like succeeding in the way that this worked. And it's on a thin thread. I totally understand. It's like Tenet, and like you can all the movies that we disagreed on, like it's like right there. If you're not like hopping on, then I'm sure he lost you. Like, there's no way. But like, you have to make that decision to like, yes, I'm in. Like, take me. And it's just like, it just depends on where you fall.
Well, let me say that I definitely agree with a lot of what you were saying there about kind of what he was going for there, but I definitely don't agree that this movie is not meant to feel like it has main characters. I mean, you could say that 2001, even though that guy is basically like the lead, that he really isn't the lead. He doesn't show up for a long time, and even though he's kind of the lead, he's kind of not. I don't know if you can really make that case with this. I mean, this movie is absolutely about these two characters as much as Punch Drunk Love is about those two.
Yeah, I mean, Punch Drunk Love is more Adam Sandler. This one is like co-stars, like they're co-leads for
Yeah,
sure.
but I mean, to say that it doesn't have one, I mean, they're the leads for sure.
I mean, it's technically in some ways it's Alana's movie even more than Gary's, but
it could easily, yeah, that argument could easily be made back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not. But what I mean is that it really feels like the whole fly in the wall analogy works for this movie. Like, that's the kind of energy it's going for. Like, that doesn't have an agenda. There's no inciting incident except for the fact that they meet, but and that they end in the end in the classic way that a romantic comedy would, where he gets the girl in the end. But we know that that's not the case. For one thing, it's illegal, if I'm not mistaken, for them to be together. And secondly, like, we've seen
It
what.
was California.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but also what led us to here doesn't give us any indication that this is not going to fall apart again the next day.
So Gil, what do you feel like the movie is saying then?
Well, it's saying that we're stupid when we're young, and oftentimes, and like you said, with the adults in our life that are not very mature, like, age is just a number. Gary is very mature for his age, and she's fairly immature for her age. So technically, they're the same age psychologically. Um, but at the same time, they're both making a lot of stupid decisions, stupid mistakes. Like, Gary opens like various businesses, like he just, I think the intention of the movie is just to show that none of us know what we're doing. Like, that we're just winging it. That life is all about winging it. And sometimes it's good to have someone along for the ride, like a Bonnie and Clyde type of thing. And it's okay not to know where you're going. Like, it's okay for chaos to exist as long as you have a traveling companion. It'll be okay. Like, you'll make it till the next step, and the next, kind of like what Matt says, until either of you dies, basically. As long as you have someone to rely on, like, as long as you have a friend or maybe a partner, then you can just keep moving forward. It's just that forward momentum. That's what I feel like it's going for, but I'm sure it can be interpreted in different ways.
That's a lot for a movie to be about. But anyway, that at least transitions really well into my next point. Um, Talking about their ages and other aspects. If you switch the genders in this movie, it doesn't get made.
Well, that I will not deny, but I don't think that's a blight on the movie. I think it's a
I
blight
think
on
it is a
culture.
blight on the movie, but let me elaborate though. Okay.
Yeah,
All
we
right,
mentioned
here's
the
my
whole
issue.
illegal issue. Yeah.
Here's my issue with this though. Okay. I don't think it's necessary. Like after the first 10 minutes of the movie, the fact that Gary is 15, it basically becomes irrelevant. You know, because at the beginning it's important, right? They have their meet cute, it happens the way it is, and then he needs her for that very first episode to take place where she's the chaperone type thing. But after that, it's pretty much irrelevant. So why make him 15 at all, and why keep him 15 if you're going to start with him that way? Why keep him 15 throughout? Like, I don't know how accurate this movie is to the life of Gary Getzman, but I do know that it would be difficult for all these events that they portrayed in this movie to have all happened in 1 year. It feels like the movie should have spanned like 3 to 4 years or something like that. And I mean, like a good example of a movie that does that really well, if you think about like the number of scenes, the number of events that these characters go through, like, you know, this is a totally different kind of movie, but still, like the 5-year engagement, same, pretty much similar type of like a length of movie, similar number of events that the characters go through, spans 5 years. It's kind of what this felt like. Several years would have gone by, kind of thing. So if you know, E.T. Anderson was dead set on introducing Gary at 15, then it's okay, do that. Then at the end of the movie, he could have been like 18 or 19 years old. And then, you know, it's not like that would have changed what they're saying about him or anything. The average 18-year-old is not all that mature anyway. So it's not like that would have changed the very dynamic of the movie at all. And the age gap still works if they had done that. And it would have been a hell of a lot less creepy.
Yeah, no, I wondered about that, but at the same time, then it doesn't make the ending as it gives too much power to the ending. If that's what I thought too. Is he 18 by the end of this movie? Is that why they're
They
kissing?
say it's all supposed to be 1 year.
Yeah, exactly. It's over the course of like one summer or one, so like there's that when there was like the energy crisis and stuff. I don't know. But in any case, no, I think I thought about that too. That maybe that was one way to go. But then the more I thought about it, it's important that he's still a minor when they kiss, because that's why you know that this relationship is doomed. Like it's like you don't know what's going to happen. It's not an ever after. It's not like Punch Drunk Love. It's still two kids, one literally a kid and the other one psychologically a kid, still not knowing what to do, like still just afraid of the world, and are just falling back onto each other. And again, but as long as, you know, hopefully they'll live to like learn from that day, and maybe the next thing they'll do will be more successful. Who knows? That's just the way life is. But I
Is she
think
really psychologically a kid? I mean, maybe at the very beginning, but I don't really feel like she's that immature, mentally speaking.
not that, but she tries to like hit above her weight, what you call it, class or something. Like, you know, she makes a fuss about the fact that she's a politician when she's really just a volunteer in a, you know, like a regional campaign.
That's true. That is pretty immature.
That's, you know, she's very immature. Like they have this whole like tit for tat thing about like, you know, showing off, like if she's with the actor and he's doing this, she's doing that. It's all very immature.
I guess that's
Yeah.
a good point.
I mean, yeah.
That's interesting. I don't know. This next one's short, but I feel like so many things in this movie do not pay off at all. Like there's this restaurant where he's basically treated like family, and the way the scenes play out where he keeps coming in and they keep kind of like showing stuff, it's like as if it was all going to pay off in some way. It doesn't at all. There's like no payoff at all. It's not even really important to the story. Alana's acting career, like they start this whole thing where she starts trying to act, it doesn't really pan out into anything. The guy outside the political office, like they put a bunch of like build up to it, nothing happens. Like there's a lot of weird stuff like that. And the only thing I really want to say is that similar to Inherent Vice, only, you know, I do think this is a significantly better movie than Inherent Vice, but I found it interesting that the side characters in these, you know, episodes are like better than the main cast. And not just, I'm not talking about acting. I'm just saying like they're better characters. In Inherent Vice, you got like Martin Short and Josh Brolin. They're like fantastic, even though the movie is a mess, In Licorice Pizza, like the best things in the movie are like Bradley Cooper, Sean Penn, Tom Waits, Maya Rudolph for sure. They're all really great. But yeah, all these little things. There's like a lot of stuff that just doesn't pay off at all.
I don't know if Matt wants to back me up here, but the one thing you said, a payoff. Generally, the reason why things don't get closed up is what Matt is saying, and what I said is that it's not over yet. Like they're just trying different things. He got her into the casting agent in order to get into acting. She tried it out, like she did a casting call. She didn't even get the part necessarily. Like it sounded like she was, but it's all like up in the air yet. Like nothing's happening with it. And then she moved on to the next thing because it wasn't successful. Just like with Gary, like opening the water beds and then going into the pinball, like just whatever the next thing is, until something's gonna click. And as far as like the payoff, what was the first one you said? Like not the restaurant, but
the restaurant. Yeah, it's strange. They have numerous scenes that establish this interesting relationship he has in this restaurant, and it does nothing for the movie.
You're talking about the Japanese restaurant?
No, the restaurant at the beginning. Where
Cock and Bull, the bar thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's basically family there. He walks in and they all know him. He can request certain tables. It's like this whole thing that's kind of it's very much focused on in a weird sort of way, as if it's going to pay off with something, and it feels like whatever that was just got cut out of the movie.
No, I mean I don't think so. I think go ahead, Matt.
No, I think that this is all driving back to the two positively charged ions thing. I mean, like, okay, the waterbed business, which, by the way, I have a special connection to because I actually grew up sleeping on a waterbed.
Yeah, I thought about that when I was watching the movie.
But, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's building up. That's building up. That's building up. You're gonna come to an end, and it's gonna be happy. And then the petroleum embargo happens. Oh fuck, we're out. Okay, so we're gonna do this, and this is working well. We're working with this guy, and and this didn't work out because that happened. I mean, like I think there's actually a common theme in everything that's going on in this movie, that there isn't an end. That
it's essentially life. Like that's what life is. It's like you keep going until you hit a wall.
Right. The end is death. The end is death. Everything else is a build-up, and they're like, okay. Oh shit. Okay. Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, that's basically life.
And also, I now I remember the other thing that you said, the guy outside the office that was
that one semi pays off.
It pays off because he was trying to catch him having a homosexual relationship, and that's why he brought her and everything. That was very, very closed up, but yeah, I mean, but as far as the cock and bull thing, the restaurant, I think they established the fact that he's the man there, and it paid off later on when she came back with Sean Penn because it was his place, and she was like, coming into his territory. What do you mean? Like that was very climactic. The fact that they were basically like eyeing each other the entire time, and then she goes off and does the Evel Knievel thing with him. But he cares for her, and he runs like to see if she's okay when she falls off the motorcycle.
I'm not saying nothing happens in the scene. I'm saying that could have been done at any restaurant, and everything would have been the same.
Not necessarily, because establishing the fact that he's a regular and everybody knows him, and he's got like a usual table.
Let me rephrase that then. You could have done the exact same thing if earlier on in the movie you just established that he frequents that place, but none of the other stuff about it was. They spend time building up a very specific relationship between him and this restaurant. If it had just been that was the place he would frequent, you could have done that in 20 seconds of screen time. You wouldn't have needed all the other buildup. There's something about that doesn't work. And I'm not saying that what you're saying is not valid. Yes, she does go back there with Sean Penn, and it is his place. But there's more than that. It's not just the place he frequents. There's a lot more to it than that. And that a lot more, nothing comes of it.
It doesn't seem like to me. It just seems like that what it was trying to establish is that this kid is just very friendly. Like he really befriends everybody around him, and he's not just a regular. He's like friends with the with the host and everything, and he's like a minor. He can't even order a drink there. It's just to establish that there's something very unique about this kid, that he's like an old soul. I mean, I don't know why you're trying to read too much into it. Like, is he supposed to take over the restaurant?
No.
I mean, like,
well, I don't know. It seems like something's supposed to happen, but I love that you just said that, because that leads perfectly into the next thing I was going to say.
okay.
I feel like Licorice Pizza wants to have its cake and eat it too. Because when it comes down to it, Gary is not a good person. He's all right, but he's not really that good. The movie is like bending over backwards to show you that he is an exceptional 15-year-old that possesses wisdom, courage, persistence, and ambition that's like far beyond his age. And yet he acts like a total jackass and is cruel to Alana. We're basically expected to go like, well, he is a teenager. Shrug. Every time that he does that. But it's yet like the rest of the movie is completely, at odds with that, because with every other thing about him. Meanwhile, Alana starts out very likable. She's open-minded enough to give Gary a chance. She puts up with his shit, like him being an asshole to her, but by the very last air quotes episode, they have their big falling out, she suddenly gets a calling to get into politics for no apparent reason whatsoever. And she seems to have this history with the Brian guy, the guy who gets her the job, not the politician, but the guy who's the assistant, whatever, what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Presumably months go by. And at the end of the movie, Alana is getting to the point where she decides to give Brian a shot. That like if they're the last two in the building, and he asks her out for drinks, she's going to give him a shot. They're about to go out to have drinks, probably have sex, start a relationship together. And then the phone rings and it's the boss, Joel. Joel asks her to meet him for drinks, and she immediately drops Brian like a hot potato for the obvious upgrade of the boss, which is a shitty thing to do. But then on top of that, she doesn't burn her bridge with Brian. She lies to him so that in case it doesn't work out with Joel, she can still have him in the back burner and still have a shot with him. Then she goes to the restaurant, with the politician guy, Joel, and she finds out that Joel's gay and has no feelings for her whatsoever. She has the nice moment and hugs it out with Joel's gay lover, which is somehow causes her to run to Gary's arms because she just has to be with him now. I mean, basically by the end of the movie, Alana is cheap. She bounces from one guy to the next in a matter of 5 minutes, and her change is completely unmotivated. Her character's weak and slutty at the end.
No, not weak and slutty. It's she's going back to who she cares for and who always like cares for her, whether he's doing it in the nicest of ways. Obviously that's problematic. And by the way, I don't think Gary is he's like basically on his way out, like child actor, like a failing child actor, and that lost his cachet, and he's failed in multiple business attempts. I don't think this sets him up as some sort of like, oh, he's gonna be rich and stuff or something.
I don't
Maybe
mean to say that. That's not
like he's and he's not. He's somewhat likable, like in the sense of like just his gutso, but generally they're both not super likable characters for sure. That's and I love that. That's my favorite types of characters. But yeah, that's at least my impression.
You don't think it makes her kind of slutty that at the end of the movie she's just about to sleep with Brian. She gets the phone call, decides she's going to go out, hopefully to sleep with Joel. Then, when that doesn't work out, decides that she's got to run back to Gary in one night.
To me personally, and I don't know, maybe Matt can add to that. Like, to me, she just seems confused, and she sees someone that really cares for someone, but he can't be with him, and she's stuck in that same situation, just like a homosexual couple for a politician wouldn't be good at that time. She can't really be with a minor, but she wants to be, so she makes the choice to do that. But obviously it's bittersweet because like we know that this is not gonna work out. I mean, that's the way I perceived it.
I might be and by might be I mean definitely stepping outside of my field of expertise here. This might actually be illustrative of just the reality of being a woman versus being a man, which is just men mature later, women need to mature earlier, just in terms of reproductive issues and everything like that. So, what men do generally, in order to try to find a mate, is, men are, and obviously, if we ever get anybody listening to this that doesn't know us, yes, I'm acknowledging that we're all straight men. Uh, you know, Men tend to try to be a little bit more aggressive, and not aggressive violently, but we try to be a little bit more proactive, and put ourselves out there for whoever might want to actually mate with us. Women have to be more selective, and the reality is that once, I mean, obviously, Alana's only 25 at the end of this movie, but at some point she decides to go back to old reliable because he's reliable, and that's a factor. It seems to be a factor in women's thinking, and it has been for several thousand years. I mean, I don't know if that ran through Paul Thomas Anderson's head when he was reading the script, but it actually makes perfect sense when you think about the behaviors of men and women, uh, and especially given the context of like men and women that aren't compatible. But the guy who's focused on who really just wants this one woman, but he's still going to be extroverted, and he's going to go out there and he's going to make himself available to any other option out there. And the woman who's thinking like, okay, well, I'm not compatible with this guy, but he's reliable and I have a bunch of options, and I'm going to look at my other options, but at the end, I'm going to go back to the reliable person.
What do you think it was that made her make that decision, though?
Let me run through the scene in my head.
I mean, I don't want to sound too critical, but it's the end of the movie. I kind of feel like it should have been pretty clear.
It's pretty clear to me personally, but
Gil, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think I've said that before. As that she doesn't know what she's doing. All she knows is that she's been burned several times by other attempt at relationships, whether it's the other child actor, Sean Penn, the jumping from the guy who got her hired, forgot his name, to Joel. Brian to Joel. And then instead of going back to Brian, she's like, I'm not going back to that. I know I'm going to get burned in some ways there as well. So it's that urge of like when she hugs his partner, Joel's partner, Matthew, the I think she had that sense of like I want this. Like I even though it's not the right decision, it's because she's stupid, because she hasn't figured out life yet. She thinks that the right decision is to go to Gary because that's the person who's the rock in her life, solid, that always wants her, cares for her, that's like there for her, and there's a comfort there, even though that's not how life works. In order to succeed, you have to sometimes take a leap, and it's ironic because they take leaps this entire movie. She just doesn't choose to take a leap that specific moment. She chooses to go back to him. But the next day she's gonna do something else. That's the whole thing of like life doesn't end there. It's just that that one night she chose to go back, and that's just where he chose to end the movie. But this could have gone on for another 2 hours, unnecessarily so. Like I think if anything could have been tiny bit shorter, but I felt like the pacing was okay. But that's the way I perceive it. It's just the wrong decision she's
It's
making.
terrifying that you tell me that, because it sounds as though both of you are telling me that you got the exact same interpretation that I did out of it, except for some reason you guys see that as a beautiful ending and I see it as a depressingly terrible ending that doesn't say anything unless it's saying that Alana is fucked no matter what she does.
For now, like for at this point in her
I
life.
don't what in this movie gives you any hope that it would change. The older men that she encounters throughout the entire movie are all worse than Gary. So why is it that I'm not saying to delve into life and your wisdom and reality. I'm saying, what does the movie say? The movie doesn't say anything about it or it looking better in the future.
Yeah, no, I mean it says that's what life is. Life's a journey, not a destination. Is that she has to keep trying. She just has to keep trying. She's gonna keep making mistakes, and that's just life. And the reason, like I said, it goes back to the beginning. You're comparing it to movies that tick all the generic formulaic boxes of like, act one, act two,
Good storytelling.
conventional storytelling, which this is not. That you should also see Phantom Thread, by the way, because
I will. I
it's
totally
not as
will.
extreme as Licorice Pizza, but it's extreme in its own ways. As far as like love story goes, like it's completely demented. So, but it's not as episodic as this. So maybe you'll like like it more. But it's definitely there's similarities between that and this where it's just not the way a movie is supposed to work, but it works. That's what's great about it. Like
I think
it's
it's
just
not the way a movie's supposed to work, and it doesn't work.
exactly for
Well,
in your specific case, which, and I'm sure many more people. I'm not saying that you're unique.
Well, I think I'm in the minority. I think most people really liked the movie.
And if you want, like, I mean, as far as like American Graffiti and this, like the critics, I think is American Graffiti has like 98 Metacritic, and this one has 90. They're both great scores, but
Sure.
American Graffiti is slightly more liked by the critics too, so that touche there as well.
I, Jason, just out of curiosity, like, is that like a binary assessment in terms of movies, like even kind of like this, where it's just like, is the movie ending on a positive sense that things are going to work out, or it's going to end on a negative sense of like, oh, now she's going to be fucked from the moment that the credits roll? Or do you think that there is an effective way to deal with, we don't know, we just took this chunk out of these people's lives, and we're and the credits roll and that's it?
You're asking
And
me if there's something I would have done different to try and communicate the same thing?
well, yeah, and well, I mean, more specifically, like, um are we dealing with that binary, or are we talking in a sense of like, okay, we're there can exist a story of, like, here's a chunk of a person's life, and this is a complicated person, and we are getting a sense of her life and her personality in a certain time and how she's reacting. and we're going to cut it off at some point, and it's not going to be like
Happily ever after.
right, and it's also not going to be like, and she's going to be dead with a snoz full of coke in a week.
Yeah, like it's like it's not a
is that your
tragic
question?
comedy, but it's yeah.
I'm not. I just want to know. Is that are you asking me a question or?
Yeah.
And what is the question?
Do you think that we are or should be dealing with some kind of a middle ground there? Because like even Annie Hall, to a certain extent, had like a catharsis, that this movie lacked. Where okay, it's all about this relationship. It didn't last. We broke up, all that stuff, and we still met up later, and it was nice
Right.
seeing her again, and all that stuff.
So are you asking
Yeah.
me? I'm sorry. I just want to clarify your question. Like,
Okay.
are you asking me? Is there a movie that could have done that I would have liked, or is there a way this movie could have been different that I would have liked? I don't understand what
I guess I'm kind of acting. I guess I'm kind of asking both.
Okay. Well,
Or
I
guess
think there's definitely movies that are that don't end in the traditional way that you're talking, like in a common traditional way that I love. I already mentioned Inside Llewyn Davis.
Yeah.
That is a pretty sad ending to that movie, and it's a masterpiece of a movie. And the moment that you realize the way they ended it and what it is saying about the story, the entire impact of the whole catharsis of the movie, the whole like point of why the movie was even made becomes abundantly clear in that last scene. And you're like, wow. Look at like The Graduate ends with kind of a weird ending like that. That's like where you realize, oh shit, this is not, this is not the happy ending that it looks like in 10 seconds ago, kind of thing. And it says something about the movie. You mentioned Annie Hall. I think to a lesser extent that definitely is true as well. I mean, there's plenty of movies that have a weird kind of not so happy ending, but I think you said it just 10 seconds ago, or 2 minutes ago. I think you said it best. Those movies all do something with the ending that is not just very cathartic, but also very clear. This movie doesn't. It's like, I could even just take your analysis at face value and say, I think you're completely right. I don't think it's very clear that that's correct, though. I mean, maybe it is. I could take your word for it, but all of those other movies did a far better job telling that story, whatever those stories were in each one of them, whatever the case might be for those movies. Whereas like this movie ends and it's like, okay, I mean, right now, I asked you guys it several times in this podcast. I said, so then if that's what you think happened, which I completely agree, we definitely see eye to eye on what those characters were going through in those moments. But then what the hell does that say about the movie at the end? Because to me, it says something unbelievably cynical that this is just going to keep going on. She has no good choices at all. And like you said, Matt, that's the point of the movie, that this is going to keep going until she dies. I feel like if that was the point of the movie, not to say it wasn't, but if that's what he was going for, the better ending would have been to show a montage of them continuing to have these problems until the day they died. That would have driven that point home.
Well, to some degree, it is because one of the reasons why the whole valley thing plays into it is that you're on the outskirts of Hollywood, and there are these people that essentially you that live in the valley and go through the cycle and just never succeed. They never get out of the valley. It's also a bit of a metaphor. It's just the valley itself, specifically as a character. It's this trap.
Yeah.
That so like it's to some degree, I think it's what the movie is saying, but not tragically so. Just to say that she's gonna have to keep trying. She's not there yet. Like that's just like the way life is, and that's the slice of pizza, slice of life that we're giving you right now, just to illustrate that life is not a destination; it's a journey. Because if they gave her a closure, then it would be a destination. If they don't give her closure, it's a journey. That's what I think it's trying to do. That's why he has to be a minor in the end still and not 18. That's why she has to make the wrong decision, because it's a slice of life. It's not act 1, act 2, act 3. It's something different. And I think the main issue that you're having with it and others are having it is expectations. You're expecting it to be a 3-act story. You expected it not to be episodic, or at least the episode to connect more so. But it's not what the movie is going for. That is not that's like, coming to 2001 and asking where's the protagonist. I'm starting with the apes, and then I go to the guy, and then I go to the astronauts, and then it's a baby in space. Like, who's the protagonist here?
Question.
Like it's you're asking, the expectations are just not being met. So obviously you're not gonna.
Well,
wait, quick question. All right, if that's the case, that that the ending is much more simple, and it's just if what we're supposed to take from this is life is a journey, then wouldn't the ending be far better if instead of running to him, if she just grabbed a bag and went off on her own? That would show
making the right decision.
That would show that she's making the right decision, and that it's still unknown. There's still a very good chance she's going to encounter more shitty men in her life, but at least she's now realized that life is a journey and she's got to keep going, instead of going back to the guy, illustrating that she hasn't learned anything, and neither has he.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing that could be an ending. I just
Perhaps
don't know
better,
if
though.
but it's just not as unique as this ending. Like,
well,
it's just.
Sorry,
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, I think this is where my interpretation is a little bit more correct than yours, Gil. In that it's not really about life being a journey. It really is about the relationship between the two characters, and it is about it fundamentally is about these two people, and she's going back to that rock in her life. I don't think that negates the fact that this is going to be an ongoing thing, and that it's going to have the ups and downs and all that stuff. But I mean, I think focusing on life as a journey is uh, is missing a lot of aspects of what the movie is actually talking about. I think that the fact that we have these dual protagonists is actually really important, in that there's a reason why they keep coming back to each other even though it doesn't work. But I don't know if I really made my point very well there. But
No,
I mean,
I completely agree with you, by the way. I think it's another reason why they need to be together in the end. Is, like you said, it's the whole two particles in space that are just attracted to each other, like, and they keep colliding and just causing more drama in their lives, but they keep coming back. Like, how often is that the case in relationships where there's toxic aspects to it, but for some reason the two people are just cannot, like, be without the other,
It definitely happens.
yeah, so I think that's a big part of the movie. That's why it would be a weaker ending for her to just walk away from it, because that means she's made the right decision, even though we don't see where she's going. There is like an ending to it. It needed to have a non-ending. That's the thing. Like, that's what I feel like it needed to be. And the journey, like life's a journey aspect, is for the two of them, not just for her. It's for this relationship that we don't know what's going to happen next. Most likely it's not going to work out, but they haven't figured it out yet. Like, neither of them, and they're going to have to go through the rest of this journey without us, and hopefully they'll come out of it like not dead, but that's the way I feel. But what Matt is saying is more accurate. That it's really about these two particles in space that are cannot not collide. Like, they're just attracted to each other in some sort of like mystical way.
Well, actually, two positively charged ions are can't connect. It's
Can't
we
connect.
all understood what Gil was
yeah,
saying.
okay.
I don't know. Who knows? Matt gets all the. But one thing I was gonna ask you before I forget.
I have one more though, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, but and then you can do that. But
Yeah, go ahead.
just a side note. So the Japanese restaurant, because I've heard some different interpretations of this, and obviously I don't remember this completely now, the specifics, but what do you think was the intention why he had that idiot like restaurant owner talk to his Japanese wife in English with a heavy Japanese accent?
Well, I think it was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was funny. There's no doubt that it's funny, but there's been some interpretation because a lot of like what this movie does is just inappropriate. And it's almost in some ways also like an anti-woke kind of movie. It's got some offensive aspects to it, and I think that's intentional. It's part of it, I think, is to say like this is okay. This is okay because we're like in the 70s. We're not like in 2020,
Yeah.
2021. And this is the way life was back then. Like people can be obnoxious, people can be sexist, people can be and somehow get away with it. And it wasn't okay. You know, like the casting agent tells her about her Jewish nose and stuff like that. Like it's just a lot of like stereotypes and things like that I really feel like had was playing with the idea of how look at how offensive life used to be. So maybe all of us should really just calm down, like just take it easy. I felt
I
like
don't know if that was his intention, but I certainly hope that that's what people get from it.
yeah, that's like
I
yeah, but
I was just gonna say, what you just said there reminded me of Inherent Vice. Like the um, in my opinion, the funniest scene in Inherent Vice is when Joaquin Phoenix goes and talks with Josh Brolin, and they're at the Chinese or Japanese. I cannot remember which one it is. I want to say it was Japanese actually, but the they go to this like restaurant, and the and it also takes place back then as well, and he kind of says to him, Josh Brolin he's just shoveling pancakes into his mouth, and he says to Joaquin Phoenix like, this place does not have the best pancakes in town. It doesn't even have like the second best pancakes in town. It has good pancakes. And he's like, well, why do you come here? And he says, I come here for the respect, or something like that. And they're like, he's like, what? And the guy walks out, and Josh Brolin just yells like "Moto Pankeku" or something like that to him. And he just guy like bows and runs back into the kitchen to get him more pancakes. And it's just like, it's so like strange and, like you said, borderline offensive, but it's kind of the time.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, I mean, that scene is taken to the extreme with the Japanese thing, but it's not untrue. It is true that even I used to do this. Like if I speak to someone who's not a native speaker, I would sometimes like not talk with a perfect or at least like my best possible American accent. I would dumb down my accent in order to like if I speak to a Spanish speaker, I would sometimes have like a borderline Spanish accent mixed in with my English just to make it more understandable to
I think
them.
a lot of people do that. I think
Yeah, a lot
I
of people,
think
like some people
when two people
slow
are
their
trying, yeah,
English. Yeah.
exactly. When
But
two
to
people are
just
just
change your
desperately trying
accent to match theirs is like really
well,
weird.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That is a little weird. I was gonna say, like, when two people are trying to communicate and they're grasping at little straws, and they're just trying to get their point across, talking slower, talking louder, using your lips more to like accentuate the words and whatever, like the movements of your mouth and everything, and sometimes strangely accenting the words in odd ways. It's weird, but it kind of works. Like, people kind of get you a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah, I've tried to stop that over the years because I realized that like that might not be the most like correct way to go about that. That's like slightly yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, but in any case, yeah. But if you want to go on your last thing,
Yeah, sure. The last thing I want to say, in my opinion, is like one of the most important things. And I know it's kind of, when you're being critical of a movie, it's kind of, you know, I don't want to say cliche, but it's been done a lot, you know, when you just to point out that another movie is better, you know, similar movie is better. But in nearly every way that matters, Almost Famous is a much better movie than this. Both movies are about a young boy and an older girl, or well, she kind of seems older. I guess in Almost Famous, she's about the same age, but still, whatever. Both have like a driven, intelligent boy character. Both have these like characters that go through a bunch of crazy events with celebrities. Both are real life stories, and in both movies, the boy is overshadowed by the rest of the actors around him. And in Almost Famous, we're desperately rooting for William. Like, we really, really want him to succeed. He's precocious, but he's also smart and humble and respectful. By comparison, Gary's a piece of shit. You know, and you know, it's just it's tough to compare the two in that aspect, and to be favorable about this Licorice Pizza. I mean, Cameron Crowe wrote Almost Famous with a passion for telling his truth. And it just kind of feels like PTA wrote Licorice Pizza with a craving for the past, to try and, like you said, a slice of time and a slice of life, like to like show this time in history and whatever. He has this like desire to basically drop Easter eggs and member berries, but you know, he wanted the movie to contain all sorts of real events that actually did happen. But in the end, it probably would have been better if he had fictionalized it a bit just to make it a better story. But you know, and he didn't. And then you know, make the alterations for the sake of the story. But I don't know. The movie has issues, and the worst part is that it doesn't really feel like any of those issues were unavoidable. I really feel like he could have like made some changes, and it would have just been a better movie. I think it could have and should have been much better.
I think it goes back to, it's just a different kind of movie. I did rate Almost Famous 8, so I like that movie. It's just not as much as Licorice Pizza. The critics gave it the same rating as Licorice Pizza. They're both 90, so at least you know, that's a tie. But I just think it's a different movie. I remember really liking Almost Famous, but again, it's a very emotional movie, very protagonist centered. It's about his journey. Like, we've seen that movie, just not in that specific you know, organization of characters and plot. But I really think Licorice Pizza is doing something elevated, different than those movies, more interesting, just a little bit, just enough to tick it to a 9 from an 8. Like, 8 to me is above average, and 9 is just great. And to me, like, Licorice Pizza is great. Almost Famous is like very, very good. And not to mention that, yeah, again, the camera work, the use of energy, the motif of running, the intensity of some of the scenes, and the directing that he does there. The Tom Waits, Sean Penn scene is great. Like, you know, like what's his face? Bradley Cooper is awesome. Like, he really gets some really nice moments from these people that are, yeah, like you said, vignettes that are just spectacular. Like, as individual scenes, it's kind of like in Tarantino in a sort of way, where like it's just like when he gets characters in a situation that's just captivating. The scene with the casting director, oh my God, that was the best casting like scene that I've ever, casting agent scene I've ever seen. Like he made so much more of that than it needed to be. That's just like a master filmmaker at work. Cameron Crowe is just an adequate. He's a solid filmmaker, but he's no Paul Thomas Anderson.